So, good evening, everyone. Uh, we go live for today's webinar on ISO 42001. We'll wait for some time for people to join. And okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'll just wait for some time more, a little bit more, and then we'll start. All right. Right. I guess I'll start now. People will start joining, and we will. All right. People are joining. Let's wait for a little bit more. And right, I'll start now. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where I'll be discussing ISO 42001. Now, the main aim of launching ISO 42001 is to get on top of AI. A lot of people are today saying that is AI going to create job loss? Of course, it's going to. I was watching a podcast on AI from Elon Musk, and what Elon Musk says is another 20 years down the line, human beings may not have to work anymore, and a human being will just work for hobby. Well, it it surely may be possible, but in today's era, and we look at another 10 years down the line, uh, AI adoption is something which all professionals at all levels will have to get into, at least in the tech sector, right? And you will see that with now AI models coming in, robotics coming in, the integration happening over a period of time, computing speeds increasing, quantum computing on the horizon, we are going to see a massive change in how we live in our societies today, right? And therefore, we are probably at 0.01% adoption of AI today. I'll be honest with that. Uh, I've been following AI for quite some time now, and I can tell you that the AI adoption has just started. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. Uh, it's the early years, and therefore, the early adopters will definitely be benefited once you understand what is the AI evolution has been in the last around 60 years. Now, AI is something not explored by human beings. It's being explored for last almost since mankind probably got into senses. It's almost 2000 year old when we have been talking about AI. We have seen movies on Frankenstein and whatnot. So AI is not a fantasy. AI today is a realism, and that happened because we had somewhere down the line centralized data in the form of binaries through which we could create models which mimic our neural systems, right? So, well, I don't want to get into the technology per se, but uh, from the perspective that as security professionals, I'm now a core security professional, more or so. I look at a great amalgamation of what's going to happen in the future. And AI and cybersecurity will go hand in hand. Now, the earliest standard which came into how to understand AI presently was, of course, the NIST AI standard, NIST AI framework, and ISO 42001. Now, generally, what ISO does is once technology adoption starts, ISO brings in a standard and then it keeps revising. You will see ISO 42001 will be revised pretty soon, right? So ISO is International Organization for Standardization, and it's a amalgamation of almost 137 participating countries, which meets once every, 10 years, at times 5 years, to build these standards which are universally acceptable, right? So they are very simple standards to understand, but very, very difficult standards to implement. Now, since AI is in the early adoption stage, this is where AI governance professionals who are dealing with governance, risk management, and compliance should undertake 42001 as under their understanding and implementation, because a lot of industry sectors are going through very large scale AI adoption. I'm aware of big fours, getting into AI adoption very, very strictly. Companies like Accenture, HCL, Infosys, TCS, they're all adopting AI at a great pace. Now, adoption is easy, but governance is difficult. Now, what happens generally in the environment is once you go with an adoption, the adoption is much quicker and governance comes later because you don't understand the risks initially and you end up building in governance on top of what you have adopted. Now, that's a wrong approach. And therefore, understanding a governance framework for artificial intelligence today, with whatever progress has happened, is a good uh, skill to have. That's what I would like to say. So, this is my initial words. What I can give you in these 20 to 30 minutes is I can give you a clear understanding of what is the structure of the standard, how can you adopt the standard, and what a management standards looks like, and how you can implement the management standard in your organization. That's the main aim. So this is what you will take away a little bit from me in next 20 to 30 minutes. I'll keep it short. About me, I'm Colonel Shivajit Naha, retired. Those who know me, those who do not, I come with almost 25 plus years of experience in cybersecurity, governance, risk management. I'm retired from Indian Army, of course. I've been following AI for a very long time. I myself built AI models, vision models, way back in 2018 to deploy some uh, vision-enabled cameras on the line of control. It was very early. We got some GPUs, trained some models, and tried to do something which is now very common. Uh, I've been a CISSP instructor for almost 3 years now. Yesterday, 75th or 76th, CISSP mentee of ours passed yesterday. 3 people passed. So, well, I can say that we have been a great resource for CISSP as one of the premium institutes. Protect Academy today becomes one of the premium institute in India to achieve a very high rate of passing for CISSP. That's all about me. So, who is it for, right? Who is this webinar for? I think anyone who is senior enough to understand the adoption of AI at the CIO, CTO roles, GRC leaders, managing in risk and compliance teams, uh, product managers, right? Product architects. For them, it is very important to understand. Consultants who are now going to face a lot of, uh, you know, implementation of these standards for their clients are going to benefit from understanding how to implement ISO 42001. Right. So let's look at what is happening now, right? If we look at the adoption of AI is just skyrocketing because nobody's worried about governance, right? Right now, whatever is available, we are looking at increasing the adoption, increasing the efficiency. And what is happening is you're leaving out the risk in the long term. So you're leaving out the risk in the long term. You're leaving out the governance part of understanding those risks, because ultimately governance is to drive business objective, right? And you have to look at the risk. You also have to look at a lot of compliances which are becoming very, very difficult to handle. I can guarantee that data localization, data privacy have become very, very challenging compliances to be met all across the world, not only in India, all across the world, right? So that has been a challenge uh, for most of the organizations, and meeting them has become really difficult. So therefore, you need to be on top of understanding what AI adoption is all about. Right. So why ISO 42001 is and will be a leadership reality in the times to come is because uh, there are a lot of challenges in AI, right? Firstly, AI is heavily dependent upon data, right? So where are you going to source the data from? That's very, very critical. So sourcing of data ultimately becomes a IP infringement from somewhere. If you source the data, if the data is not clean from, then what will lead it into is your model poisoning, right? So understanding the source of the data, understanding any IP level violations, right? Understanding bias. Even data has bias. How can you trust the data? Therefore, how data is labeled and how you train the model today becomes a very, very, very important uh, part. Now, once you implement the standard, you come to know how AI has evolved over a period of time. What is supervised learning? What is unsupervised learning? What is machine learning? And where does AGI come into picture? So understanding these become part of overall implementation of 42001. So you might be in a very different sector. Say you are in health, or you are in a sector where you are very data dependent. Understanding these nuances become very important if you are in a slightly senior or a mid senior role, right? So the first part of any management standard would be governance, right? That is involvement of the senior management, how the leadership drives their organization, how a particular problem statement, whether it is cybersecurity, whether it is AI, whether it is operational risk or financial risk, how to align that with the top management perspective, the business management perspective, with the culture of the organization. So 42001, even any ISO standards, focuses very heavily on the leadership aspect, and leadership aspect leads to governance, right? Therefore, that means you have to build policies in a manner which help you in adopting AI in a responsible and risk-free manner. Why responsible? Why risk-free? That is something which you have to understand. Responsible because if your sourcing of data is not correct, if your data has not been labeled correctly, if there are biases in your model and you do not do that risk judgment, then it becomes an overall governance failure, right? Because because of AI adoption, there could be many, many uh, bias in the social, in your uh, workforce, how they perform. There would be, you will see adoption of AI might lead to risks within your organization because people might start thinking that they are going to lose their jobs. So there is going to be a cultural shift. And do you understand that cultural shift, right? That's also important. So the any ISO standard has been organized in uh, four very, very important silos, that is called the plan, do, check, and act. So what you do is, in the planning phase, you define the scope. Where is your management system applicable, right? So it's not necessary that you apply the management system to your complete organization. It can be applied in silos, in particular, verticals. You may not apply in all the verticals. So scoping for a standard is very, very important. Which part of your organization do you want to apply? Do you want to apply it on a whole? Do you want to apply on a product? Do you want to apply it on a services? It all depends on where you want to apply, right? So that becomes a important part of understanding how uh, you would like to scope. Now, also there, you come up with your AI management policy, your major policy, where you would like to lay down the broad policy level statements in your policy document, and that becomes your major governance drive for the organization, right? So that becomes your Bible, and generally, uh, management standard policies which you take out are supposed to be signed by the senior management. You understand the risks. What are the risks from adoption of AI? Data sourcing, bias, cultural shift, and many other such risks which are not very broadly defined in 42001, but you have to interpret it more and you have to deep dive. So it's just a management standard. It is not a complete roadmap. It gives you a management standard. You have to find out all the risks associated with implementation of whatever AI product or a service you are implementing in your organization. Now, once you've planned that, you've laid down your policies, you've laid down your SOPs, now you do it. So you basically implement what are the roles and responsibilities responsible for uh, implementing this management standard. So defining roles and responsibilities, defining processes which are required for managing your AI management system is what happens in this phase of your standard implementation. Then next is, once you've implemented all your required processes, you are supposed to audit them. You're supposed to check whether your implementation has been proper. Now when you check, your maturity levels come out, right? So maturity is also very important. So maturity is something which needs to be understood, that how your processes become better over a period of time. So when you start auditing your systems, when you start checking your systems, you can start developing metrics for how mature your management standard becomes. And then finally, whatever the output of your audit is, you feed it to your governance again to see whether there are any gaps in your implementation. Now, this is a standard ISO cycle. That's how ISO management standards are designed, right? So what happens is you come to understand the risks from how are you sourcing your data, how are you evaluating your models, are there any output risks, are there any cultural risks, are there any legal and associated data localization and data sovereignty risks, are you violating privacy? So there are a lot of ethical uh, AI requirements which come out of this particular standard adoption. Now, what happens is that there are some mandatory requirements which, when you deploy a standard, and there are something which the standard does not ask you to do readily. So, what happens is, once you uh, start adopting the standards, you will see there are mandatory requirements, and those mandatory requirements are definitely required if you want to go for a standard certification process for your organization. So, generally, organizations, once they adopt a standard, they would like to go for a certification, and that's where external auditors will come and audit you. And then if you do not have the mandatory mandatory documents, what happens is you fail your audit, and that's something which will definitely cost you some money also, and it's going to cause you embarrassment. So it's very important to understand what is mandatory and what is not. Now that doesn't mean you cannot do additional documentation. It's not very document heavy, right? It's not very document, 7 to 8 odd documents which you need to prepare, but that helps you in implementing the standard, that helps you in uh, understanding a standard and how to implement it. Right now, AI specific requirements has not been laid down anywhere else other than AIMS, but we also take help of NIST AI framework to implement what are the requirements of AI for ISO 42001. So it's a good framework to refer to other frameworks and adopt the best part out of other frameworks into ISO 27001. Now, the standard is very generic, it's not very specific. Therefore, you have to research a lot, and that's where your ingenuity will come in. That do you understand the nuances of the present AI systems and how to incorporate in your organization, right? And therefore, you become a techno management person who understands development of AI over the years. What are the kind of systems available today? And once you deploy, what are the requirements? Now, you might be using AI services from third parties. You might deploy AI models in your own infrastructure. What are the risks from there? What are the ethical considerations from there? How do you train? So these are the nuances which will come out, and initially looks easy but becomes slightly complex once you start adopting. And if your organization is gone heavily into adopting AI initially, it will happen is they've adopted a lot of models, a lot of agents, and now the governance team is running behind because there are a lot of legal flaws in in the adoption. So therefore, understanding them and implementing them well before you start adopting AI systems is what is critical. Now, what happens is, as I was saying, that what are the major governance requirements which you need to understand. So today models, if you look at models, whether chat gpt or Gemini 3.0 or any other models, open source models which are kept on, you can get the models on open source model on a lot of repositories, AI repositories, you will see there's a lot of drift in the decision making. So what happens? Drift is basically a statistical error, right? So a model is supposed to say go into this particular manner, right? What will happen is it will start drifting. Its responses will start drifting. There are drifting, and then what happens is it creates bias. So what happens? Its drift will be in a particular zone. That means it will bias, it will give you a result which is biased. And if there is no human oversight, what happens is the outcome is very, very bad. You must be reading about a lot of errors in use of AI. People are submitting research papers, and then those research papers are completely biased because the model starts biasing itself for saving compute systems, compute power. And that's how the neuron systems work in case of the AI models which have been developed, because they are not near perfect. There's still a lot of work to do. So that governance activity needs to be on top of that. Right. Now, what you will have to do is you'll also have to map these risks to business impact. There would be cultural issues. People will start getting jittery that, okay, maybe I'm going to lose my job. This model is going to replace me. Uh, you have to define ownership. Who owns the model? Who owns the data? From where data sourcing has happened? Where are you going to deploy the model? Are you going to deploy it on-prem? Are you going to deploy it on cloud? Are you going to use the services using APIs? So there are a lot of questions which will come out, and therefore a lot of documentation will be needed to prove this. Also, you'll have to make your own organization understand the risks and requirements of adopting AI. That becomes very critical. So once you start defining the scope, you do a gap assessment. Now, standard of implementation is you first define a scope, do a gap assessment, and generally when we do gap assessments with our client, of course, it's a very, very preliminary phase. We find a lot of gaps, right? Then you define what are the life cycle processes that are required for adoption of AI and building governance on top of what your AI systems are. Then you define roles and responsibilities. Roles and responsibility definition, if you don't do in any management process, it will not be successful. Ownership and responsibility has to be defined very, very clearly. Then you have to find the AI assets. What all assets are related to your AI system, and what are the risk areas, right? Now, risks are not very well defined in the management system. You have to do a lot of research to understand AI risks. Then, based on what your risks are, you implement policies and controls which are required. It could be an administrative control, it could be a technical control, it could be even a physical control. And then you conduct a audit. Based on what you've done, you do an audit to see what's your maturity, and then you go in for a certification process. That's very standard with any ISO standard. Now, what happens is, you know uh, most of the organizations I've seen is they go with a checklist adoption. A checklist adoption is something very, very primitive. You today have to be on top of dynamic environment analysis. You need to understand your environment very clearly, and therefore business organization analysis is very, very important for anyone who is deploying a standard. You have to understand what your business completely works, what are the organizations, who are the roles, who are the responsibilities. For any, even in ISO 27001, at times it takes us 3 to 4 months to understand a complete organization, how it works, who are the key roles, what are the processes, what are the assets. It takes a lot of time, right? Now, inventorizing AI related assets also initially maybe not difficult, because adoption has not been so fast. So but organizations which are already very, very advanced in AI adoption, you might find it difficult. Somebody's using ChatGPT, somebody has deployed a model on premise, so those become a little challenging. Now, explainability and transparency is a major issue right now. Even if you use ChatGPT, right, you can't ask him to explain why have you answered it in this way. I've seen ChatGPT giving such a great bias or repeating mistakes, because it goes into a loop and then it starts keep creating those mistakes. And if you don't check back, if you don't have an human oversight, it becomes really, really wayward. And if you don't, if there is no human oversight today, you can't rely on AI systems. That's very, you cannot leave AI systems on their own, running on their own. So there is a lot of requirement of today monitoring your model drifts. There will be a lot of drifts, and how it fairly gives a judgment. So you cannot rely on the judgment of AI systems today as of now. If you are doing it, uh, uh, God save you, because there are a lot of failures, right? So there will be a lot of how do you create reporting structures in your organization where your AI systems are failing? Do you have organizational hierarchy defined to understand risk and escalate? So you have to create escalation structures, right? And if you rely too much on vendors, you might get a lot of wrong output. Be very very clear. So you'll have a wrong output because vendors are going to say all good things, but it will not happen like that, because if you don't understand drifts, bias, explainability issues, then your adoption will be very very wrong. So today, if you look at how AI adoption is taking place very fast in healthcare, since healthcare data is available for a very vast amount of time, great use cases have been adopted in healthcare. Uh, then in consulting, with AI coming in, consulting roles, a lot of work efficiency has improved, right? In education assessment, again AI has come in a great way. Fraud detection, cybersecurity, all areas are very very comprehensive for adoption of AI. Therefore, looking at AI governance, it's a sure shot that in the near future, not even uh, very far future, even near future, the standard adoption has to be very, very, it will be very, very in demand, because I already see a lot of startups who are building AI products are coming to us and asking us to deploy the standard. Right. So what we are doing is personally take ISO 42001 because I feel that I have the necessary skills, and having worked with AI for a very, very long amount of time, having researched a lot, uh, I took the onus of launching this course myself, because firstly, in the industry, it is very difficult to find great trainers. I'm not saying I'm someone great, but yes, I do a lot of research. I come with industry experience, and that's why I only take. I used to take only one course, that is CISSP, and now I found a great interest in ISO 42001. So what I do is I take three examples of, one is healthcare, one is generative AI, and one is in the manufacturing sector. So we get three business use cases and see how adoption of these AI related services and products will impact organizational risk, organizational efficiency, right? So with this in mind, Protect Academy launched ISO 42001 as one of the prime course, right? And we're starting on 13 December. So if you are interested, you can join this course. It's a live online course in the afternoons, 2 to 5 p.m. And it'll be taken on Protect Academy's LMS, right? I'm done for the day. If you have any questions, I took exactly 30 minutes. I would like to take on questions. Uh, and If you have any questions, please let me know.
Hi, Colonel Naha. So, thank you so much for a very informative session. That was wonderful. I'll be keeping myself on mute more because there are some kids playing nearby, so you can hear the background noise. So, there is a question Rahul is writing from YouTube. So, I think it's more of a statement. He says, after reading about AI lately, just like everyone else, this kind of depth, reasoning, and clarity is something which I missed big time. So I think there's a lot of confusion about what to expect,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it will.
there is a lot of confusion because, see, what happens is once a standard comes, everybody wants to just launch a course without diving deep into how the standard works, what are the risks, understand technical understanding. Their deployment issues are not well understood by somebody who's just taken a training and come in. So when Protect Academy launches a course, we launch with great depth of research. We don't launch a course just because we want to make money. Of course, business runs on making money, but one of the clear examples is we don't launch course for which we are not sure of. So once we are sure of launching a course, there goes in a lot of research. It took me almost 1 year to make this course. So the aim is to research deep and then bring out value for someone who takes this and straight away goes and deploys it in the organization. We got a great feedback from our previous course. So and we are launching only one course every quarter, so we don't launch too many courses. Also, we launch one course in a quarter, so that everybody gets adequate bandwidth to understand. We don't keep the batch sizes long. uh, the main reason, Rahul, is because we put in a lot of research. I personally go into a lot of research to launch a course. So that's my habit. That's my military teaching. So we don't launch something unless we are very sure of it.
Right,
Right. I'm
thanks. I
waiting
think
for some.
yeah,
Yeah.
more questions, guys. The floor is open. Please feel free to drop in your questions in the comment section, whether you're joining us from YouTube or LinkedIn. Colonel Naha is here to answer all of them. So I think we'll be waiting another 30 seconds for any more questions to come in before we wrap up.
So there's a question from Harsh. Does DPDPA include ISO 42001? No, as of now. See, DPDPA is an act, it's a law. It cannot refer you to 42001. But what DPDPA tells you is how you protect the privacy, right? Not privacy, but digital data protection. So it will have correlation. How you adopt uh, AI systems will have great impact on how you use privacy information to train your models. And that's the gray area, right? How you obfuscate the data, how you anonymize the data. So that's going to have huge impact on your DPDP adoption. Because if you are deploying AI and you have not sourced the data correctly, not sourced the data from uh, authorized sources, okay, you don't have an evidence to show that you have sourced the data, you are getting into a great amount of risk, and therefore it's going to be a gray area for you. So there is no direct correlation, but yes, indirectly you can see. Once you're deploying a standard, you have to understand the laws and regulations, and DPTP becomes a primary consideration. If you are in India, if you are in Europe, it becomes GDPR. If you are in UAE, it becomes PDPL. So of course you have to consider the requirements of DPDP when you are training a model. Duration of the course, it's a standard management course. It's supposed to be 30 hours, so it's going to be 5 weekends and followed with an exam. Are there any relative and untested KPIs which can help the ISO 42001 implementation is on track? Yes, there are. You can build a lot of KPIs for. So we in the last course we created around 10 KPIs on sourcing of sourcing of the model. From where are you sourcing the model? Have you tested the model? Okay. How have you trained the data? What is your data cleaning methodology? uh, Data sourcing methodology. So you can build a lot of KPIs. For risks, you can make your KPIs and KRIs. Uh, then you have cultural shock KPI. Means, are people worried that because you are adopting AI, your people are going to be afraid that they're going to lose their jobs? do you have a KPI to measure that satisfaction or a dissatisfaction rate? So there's a lot of KPIs which you can build for the 2001. As far as the implementation is concerned, once you do a planning exercise, that time you build metrics for implementation, right? So mainly there are 9 areas given in the standard, and you can build those metrics on top of these 9 core areas which the management standard defines. Rahul, what prerequisite knowledge one must have before deep diving into ISO 40001? I think if you are a governance professional, if you are a risk management professional, I think that's more than enough. And if you have understanding of basic technology services, if you are in the technology domain, if you've been a 27001 lead implementer, you've been a governance professional, GRC professional, I won't say of someone from finance or operations, but operations maybe, technical operations maybe, yes. Uh, Understanding risk management for organization. So information security GRC professional definitely uh, will have an edge over understanding 42001 implementation better. So somebody who's already ISO 27001 will easily understand 42001. Somebody who's already a CISSP will easily understand what are the risks and why we are doing that. That's my understanding, broad understanding of 42001. Okay, Peter asked, I managed a security company. How is this important for my company? So, Peter, it all depends on what kind of services are you using, right? And what kind of, if are you a product company or are you a company which depends on the services of other AI products, right? So there will be two use cases. One is you are building your own AI products, and once you're building your own AI products, there are different risks. And once you're using services of a different organization, uh, then how do you meet the requirements, right? So these will be two different risk areas, right? So that's what will be important to you. If you are using services of someone else, then you need to understand that once you are using somebody else's services, how does it impact your organization? Or if you as a company building products on top of AI models, are you building the model yourself? Do you have that capacity, or are you using open source model, which are all models are open source right now? It's how you train the model. So you take the model, you host it in your infrastructure, train it, and then launch a product on top of it. Then that will be a different understanding, right? uh, how much we don't discuss pricing here. Pricing is something which you can discuss with our sales team. I'm not even aware of what is the pricing like. Is there a threshold AI maturity index which can act as a gate criteria prior to ISO 42001? If yes, how is this arrived at in quantifiable terms? Great question. Great question. I don't know what's your name, uh, but Harsh, right? Harsh again asks, is there a threshold AI maturity index which, see, AI systems has come in what, 2 years now, 2023. Uh, mainstream adoption has happened. 2018 is where organizations actually see what ChatGPT made is very public, common use, right? But it's not that uh, ChatGPT was the first service, right? AI has been in development since 2018. So what one can do is you can take the common maturity model, right? CMM, and make a AI RMM or AI CMM, AI maturity model, AIMM, which is standard 5 levels, level 01, level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And can you have a gateway criteria? I think you can build a gateway criteria if your governance processes have been very well defined. If your organization is already at a greater uh, risk maturity level, right? Uh, then probably you can have actually an initial threshold for AI governance. That's what my understanding says, Harsh. I hope I've been able to tell you. See, if your organizational processes are already well matured, right, you already know. So if a company which is already in a optimized state of risk management, they can easily say that once they're adopting something, what kind of risks that processes are going to get. So they might build something much more. Even at an entry level, you can have a threshold metrics, right? Your policies are well defined. From where are you sourcing your data? what kind of risks do you have. So if you have some basic processes defined, then probably you can say that you're not at level 0, you're already at level 1, where policies have been defined. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Right. Any other questions? Right. I think we are done with the questions. I hope everybody enjoyed this session. Right. And this course starts 13 December. Um, course or not, if you have any questions, you can drop me on my uh, chat, or you can drop me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer that. Right. Thank you, everyone, and great interacting with you all. A great amount of presence for also for this particular session, and I'll be launching some more webinars in the times to come. Hope you all enjoy it. Thank you so much, and take care, and bye bye.